Hello, and welcome to Episode 2 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-stress, high-consequence environments. Our mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming and time to prevent bad outcomes. In this episode, we'll talk about habits, routines, and complacency. We'll look at a near-miss event where tunnel vision and complacency may have flawed situational awareness, and we'll address a question from an SAMatters community member about how to make mayday training more realistic. Habits. We all have them. Some have good habits. Some of us have, not so good habits. The less often talked about cousin of habits are routines. Habits and routines can definitely impact your situational awareness, both in good ways and bad ways. But where do habits and routines come from? Does a habit turn into a routine? Or does a routine turn into a habit? Do habits and routines prevent complacency? Or do they contribute to complacency? All good questions. Let's explore habits, routines, and complacency. The dictionary defines a habit as a behavioral pattern acquired by frequent repetition or physiologic exposure that shows itself in regularity or increased facility of performance. An acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary, or as I would term in situational awareness, having the behavior become unconscious behavior. Routines. The dictionary defines a routine as a habitual or mechanical performance of an established procedure, with emphasis being on it being an established procedure. So by definition, routines are habits formed from following established procedures. Thus, by definition again, habits are only routines when they are formed from following procedures. But we have many habits that are formed while not following any formally established procedure. Now, is that confusing enough? Well, let's move on. The chicken or the egg? The definitions offered for habits and routines bring up an age-old question. Or should I say an egg-old question? What came first, the chicken or the egg? In the context of this topic, the question is, do habits form routines, or do routines form habits? An argument could be made for either to come first, I suppose. Your routines can become your comfortable habits, and your habits may be developed into formal routines. Enter complacency. Webster's defines complacency as self-satisfaction, especially when accompanied by unawareness of actual dangers or deficiencies. It's very unfortunate that complacency has turned into habit for some workers. Some have become satisfied and comfortable in doing things in ways that are dangerous to the point that they have literally become unaware, arguably uncaring about the dangers around them. The dangers are no longer seen as dangerous, and this can have catastrophic consequences. Contagious complacency. A complacent worker can also infect other workers. When this happens, the consequences can be significant. In fact, an entire work group can become complacent. And worst of all, an entire department or organization can become complacent. When this happens, the workers can sink into a comfortable rut and become arrogant. When this happens, employees can begin to believe that they are so good at what they do that bad outcomes would never happen to them because they never have. The success of past outcomes can contribute to complacency, especially when risky behavior is rewarded seemingly with good outcomes. When workers perform in ways that are not consistent with best practices and get away with it, meaning no bad outcome, it can build their confidence, and that is based in luck not ability. False confidence. When workers experience successful outcomes, it builds confidence. This unto itself is not a bad thing, so long as the success was based on the performance that is consistent with best practices. However, all success builds confidence, meaning success resulting from luck also builds confidence, albeit a false confidence. Psychologists that study the behavior of gamblers see this all the time. The gambler wins because they seemingly have some strategy for beating the odds, some ability to beat the mathematical probabilities of risk and return. Their success gives them confidence, which can, in turn, increase their risk-taking. Over the long run, a gambler who thinks they can beat the odds is likely going to lose, and lose a lot. But not every gambler is a loser over the long run. There is a small number whose luck runs longer than others in certain games and are based on a strategy of one player versus another player, and of course the ability to bluff your opponent. But there's no bluffing the dangerous machinery in the hazardous environments in a work setting. Observing workers who have found long-term luck can give other workers a false sense of confidence that they too can cheat the system and be successful. In the end, the casino always wins. If you doubt this, only look at the lavishness of the casino. The structures and the fixtures are built on the losses of the gamblers whose luck ran out. To overcome the curse of complacency, workers must first be aware of the affliction that they may be facing. This awareness comes from being a student of best practices. This involves learning about best practices and comparing what your organization does to the best practices of your profession. Read casualty reports to learn how workers get hurt and killed. Then compare the circumstances, the situational awareness, and the decision-making of the catastrophic outcomes to how your organization and your workers do things. When you see inconsistencies between established best practices and how your organization does things, it may be time to start asking the hard questions. Why does your organization do things differently than best practices dictate? Have you found a better way to get the job done? Is your better way safe? Or have you just been lucky? Avoid judging the bad outcomes that others experience. Oftentimes when workers read a casualty report, they can judge the performance of others without turning the harsh judgment onto themselves or their own organization. They can be lulled into thinking that a worker that experienced the bad outcome was less competent, and in fact, maybe just their luck ran out. So here are 3 discussion questions that you can have with your work group. Discuss areas where your organization may have become complacent in training or performance. Discuss areas where you have become personally complacent in your application of best practices. Discuss ideas about how to break the cycle of complacency in your organization. It's time for the Situational Awareness Near Miss Lessons Learned. This lesson comes to us from the Firefighter Near Miss Reporting System, where lessons learned become lessons applied. This one's entitled Complacency and Lack of Situational Awareness Nearly Delivers a Shocking Surprise. And this is what was reported. We were dispatched to a report of smoke coming from the grass on the side of the highway. It was rainy, humid, and foggy afternoon, so right away we were guessing that it was a motorist who saw fog and thought it was smoke, as has been the case in many times before. The engine crew responded and initially was unable to locate anything. Went in service and on their way back to quarters located the smoke. Upon investigating, they found what appeared to be approximately an 18-inch corrugated metal pipe coming up out of the ground in a grassy area just off the right shoulder of the highway. The lip of the pipe was only a couple inches from the surface and was near a ditch that ran along a tree line. It appeared to be some sort of sewer pipe, and one side of the tip was bent over like it had been hit or damaged. The crew used a shovel to dig around the pipe and then to pry the bar in and around the pipe to bend the lip clear of the opening. They then noticed an extremely large amount of heat coming from the pipe, too hot to touch, and then noticed that the rainwater inside the pipe was literally boiling. They also thought that they felt the ground vibrating slightly around the pipe. As they pondered what they were looking at, our assistant chief came on the radio and questioned if it could have anything to do with the highway light poles. Sure enough, the crew looked up, and there was a light pole about 100 feet away, perpendicular to the highway, and all you could see was the very top above the trees. The crew dropped their tools and retrieved the AC hot stick from the engine, which indicated that the pipe was, in fact, energized. Construction was being done in the area, and the Department of Transportation crew was working about a quarter-mile away. They were summoned to the scene. The DOT workers put on their electrical safety gear and used their insulated electrical tools to pull a large wiring harness up out of the water-filled pipe. They were in the area trying to figure out why the highway lights were not working. This shorting electrical equipment was the reason why. The DOT workers said that the wiring carried about 480 volts of electricity and is supposed to be buried underground, unnoticeable from the surface. The scene was turned over to DOT and the engine crew cleared. And now here is what the reporter said was the lessons learned. When the call went out, complacency reared its ugly head in our thinking that it was just a motorist seeing fog. However, I don't believe this contributed to the incident being a near miss. The captain on the scene does admit, though, that there was a bit of tunnel vision on their part, and that they saw the pipe and assumed it was some sort of sewer pipe. It had never crossed their minds that it could be electrical until the assistant chief mentioned it on the radio. She credits his intervention with possibly preventing an electrocution had they continued. I think this incident is a good reminder to always be aware of your surroundings. Don't be a moth to the flame or to the smoke. Look up and around for anything that could be related to what you're investigating. This was an unusual event. However, I do believe the voltage detection devices, i.e. our AC hot stick, are underutilized and should be one of the first tools coming off the rig more often during utility emergency and investigations. You can read about this and other near-miss events at firefighternearmiss.com. If you've experienced or witnessed a near miss, I'd like to interview you on this show. Visit my companion site, closecallsurvivor.com, and click on the Contact Us link. Thank you in advance for sharing your lessons learned so that others may live. If you're interested in attending a live event, you can check out the Situational Awareness Matters tour stop schedule at SAMatters.com. Click on the Program and Keynotes tab below the header, then click on the Event Schedule tab. If I'm in your area, I hope you'll consider stopping by and attending a live event. If you're not able to attend a live event, consider signing up for the SAMatters Online Academy. The Academy contains videos and articles that cover the same content as a 3-day live tour event, delivered in 14 modules that you can go through at your pace from your own computer. The Academy Plus version includes 4 books that are referenced throughout the Academy. The Plus version is a great bargain because the tuition simply covers the cost of the books, making the Academy free. Just check out the link below the header on the SAMatters homepage titled Online Academy. And now a question from the SAMatters community. This question comes from a Q&A session that was at the end of a Training for Failure program. What can we do to ensure our mayday training is more realistic? As I shared during the program, one of the ways that you can make training realistic is to make it stressful, to make it emotional, to get the participants involved as if the incident is real. I recently had the opportunity to observe training, mayday training of a fire department, and the scenario went something like this. They were using a video simulation of a fire that they put up onto a screen, and they put the incident commander in the room with a clipboard and a radio, and then put other firefighters off in other parts of the building with radios, and they played the scripts of Engine 1 and Engine 2 and Ladder 1 and Squad 1, and they ran this scenario, and the incident commander arrived, and the companies arrived, and they were doing the radio traffic of attack and search, and then one of the crews went up to the second floor on this apartment building, and as they were making their way down the hallway, they called a mayday that the incident commander then had to manage, and it sounded something like this: Mayday, mayday, mayday. Go ahead, company, with the mayday from command. Engine 2, we're on the second floor. We're making our way down the hallway, and we've got a firefighter whose leg is partially trapped through the floor, and we need a rapid intervention. And then the commander then dispatches the rapid intervention team, who goes in. They get the firefighter out, and then they continue to fight the fire, and happy ending. When the incident was done, the person who had facilitated the training asked me how I thought the training went. And I said, I think the scripts were okay, but it wasn't realistic. And they said, well, how was it not realistic? Everything, the video, the audio, it's all, write the script, it's all, spot on. And I said, it is, but it wasn't emotional. And they said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, it just didn't seem real to me as to how a mayday would go. I said, here's what we'll do. Reset the incident. We'll start over again, and give me about 15 minutes to set a few things up, and we'll see if we can make this training more realistic. So same incident commander, same firefighters off in other rooms, same scripts that they're doing, same video, basically just a reworking of the same scenario. So they arrive, they're sizing up, they're starting their attack, vent, search, everything's going to plan. The fire crew goes to the second floor. The incident commander knows this is going to happen. We're following the same script. And the crew starts down the hallway. Now, on this scenario, instead of me being in the room where the commander is, I'm off in another room where one of the firefighters is playing Engine 2 crew with their radio. So the commander can't see us. We're in another part of the building. And what I did is I donned an SCBA facepiece and asked the firefighter if I could call the mayday. And so I took the radio, and when it got to the point where they did the mayday, I went, "Mayday, mayday, mayday! Engine 2, we're on the second floor. We're going to wait on the hallway. We got a firefighter whose leg is partially trapped to the floor. Mayday, mayday, mayday! We need a rapid intervention team in here." And then we cued a low air alarm. And then we cued a pass device. Well, the facilitator canceled the evolution. Just got on the radio, said, stop the evolution. And I'm thinking, stop? I'm just getting started here. I'm really starting to have some fun now. And I come out of the room that we were in, up the hallway and into the room where the incident commander was. And there the incident commander sat in a chair and looked like he had just seen a ghost. He was pale. He was sweating. And I asked the facilitator, I said, why did we stop? And he said, because the commander froze up. Froze up? Yeah, he couldn't think. He couldn't write. He couldn't talk. He froze up. And I said, well, what do you think made him freeze up? Well, I don't know. So I asked the commander, I said, why did you freeze up? And he says, that sounded so real that I thought if I screw this up, someone's going to die. And then I turned back to the facilitator and I said, that's the kind of stress that you want to build into your drills. That way the commander is learning how to maneuver through a mayday of the mindset that this is real and I got one chance to get it right and to save these people. During the drill, make sure that the calls for mayday sound like the people who are calling the mayday are really in distress. The first time that they did it sounded like the guy was ordering a pizza from Domino's. There was no stress. He was simply reading the script. But boy, when we put in and it cost no money to do this. All we did is introduce stress in a voice, air passing through a facepiece, a low air alarm, and a pass device. And that was it. Another thing you could consider is having the mayday crew give incomplete or partial information as to where their whereabouts are or why they need help. Now, I'm not advocating the people that call maydays, scream on the radio or freak or give partial information or incomplete information. But on the command end of this is the realism of the mayday that they're going to have to manage. It isn't perfect. It isn't scripted. It isn't enjoyable to hear somebody, calling a mayday that's in the process of dying. And the commander who's going to practice this and learn this needs to get of the mindset that this is what's happening on the other end of that radio. When they key the radio, have them only give a partial message and then have the radio go silent. Command, mayday, mayday, we're on the second floor. Silence. As if, the radio stopped working or they dropped the radio or something. Their voice being garbled and unreadable. I mean, that's, having command say have other companies to talk over top of the mayday because they maybe didn't hear it. And they're saying, we need another ladder here to look for extension or something right in the middle of the mayday. And add this kind of stress and realism to the incident commander. That simple change in the radio communication is enough to raise the stress level of the commander, and it was just crystal clear the obvious change in the performance and the mindset of that commander of the stressed scenario versus the non-stressed scenario. We want to get the commanders good to where they can manage through this incident with stressed communication and the commanders being stressed. And when you do this, you're going to see two different outcomes. And what we want to do is get to where the commander doesn't freeze up and can continue to carry through on the strategy and perform as you would want him to perform in the real deal. That's it. That's the wrap on episode 2. Thanks for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I sincerely appreciate your support of my mission. If you like the show, please go to iTunes and search for SAMatters Radio and subscribe to the podcast and leave your feedback and a 5-star review. This will help others find the show. You can also sign up for a free SAMatters monthly newsletter by visiting SAMatters.com and clicking on the red box on the right side of the homepage. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gassaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit SAMatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgassaway.com.